From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Ciara Speller. April is recognized nationally as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And according to a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services report, nearly 2 million children nationwide received prevention services in fiscal year 2021. That same report found that fewer than 1/4 of confirmed abuse victims were removed from their homes because of an investigation or emergency response. So today on 22 News in Focus, we'll be talking with two organizations that advocate and provide services for children. In the first half hour, we'll be learning about the work being done by the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. And in the second half, our guest will be from Helix Human Services, formerly the Children's Study Home. Our first guest is Kara McElhone, the Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. We thank you so much for being on the program with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So first, let's just get some background on your organization. When was Children's Advocacy Center founded and why?
So this year marks our 25th anniversary of being an organization serving Hampshire County. It was originally designed to figure out a better response to child abuse in our community. 25 years ago, we realized that we need to really think about what is the model that best serves kids and how, as adults and agencies responding to child abuse, we can work together to collaborate to make that process smoother, more trauma-informed, and really focused on the child.
Yeah, and tell us just a little bit more about your mission statement.
Sure, our mission is to prevent and end child abuse by providing safety, healing, and justice.
And how does CAC work and why this approach to child advocacy?
Sure. With the CAC, at our CAC and at CACs throughout the state and throughout the country, the model is one in which we bring the different agencies that we work with together under one roof to respond to child abuse allegations. So without a CAC, a child goes to a police station to be interviewed multiple times, maybe to a district attorney's office, to a hospital, to all these different locations so that different investigators can find out what happened. With a CAC model, they all come to our facility, which is a home that's designed for kids, and all the adults who are investigating and need to figure out the next steps gather together. The child tells their story once to a trained forensic interviewer, and it's really, again, designed so that kids aren't further traumatized by sharing their experiences.
Yeah, and so talk about your regional team partners.
Sure, so we work in Hampshire County. Our kids live and or have been victimized in Hampshire County. So we work with law enforcement in every city and town in the county. We work with the Northwestern District Attorney's Office, their Child Abuse Unit. We work with DCF, and we work with the Department of Public Health with the Pediatric Sexual Assault Unit.
Yeah, and how many children and families do you serve annually, do you think?
So we typically have about 200 new kids coming through in a given year. But we provide services for kids and families for as long as they need it. And so sometimes we'll have a child come through and then, they are interviewed, they meet the team, they go off, their family's doing okay, but then another year or two pass, they need to come back to get additional services. We provide on-site mental health care for kids, trauma care, so that, sometimes developmentally kids are, go through a different stage, what's happened to them comes back up and they need additional care, and we're still there to help them then.
And highlighting mental health has been really important right now. Talk a little bit more about those services.
Sure, we're really fortunate we have a Director of Therapeutic Services on site. She provides free, trauma-informed mental health care for kids who come through who've been victimized by sexual assault, physical assault, sexual exploitation. And again, our services are free and they're right on site in a place that is designed for kids.
And that can be something really hard to talk about. So what's kind of the approach to make sure that they feel safe and they feel like it is something they can talk about?
So no child ever has to come to us until they're ready to talk. And so we would never force a child to come. This is about meeting the child where they are, giving them an opportunity to regain some control, to be able to share their experience in whatever part they want to share. It's really child-led.
And how are children referred to your organization?
So, typically the reports come through the DCF 51A that gets sent to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney's office sends it to us. But we're also available for community, if a community member reaches out and they want help to get services for children, they can call us directly as well.
And are there any costs for those services?
No, we're free. We are completely free. We are fortunate that we have some grant funding. We're a nonprofit organization, so we're also, dependent upon community donations. But our model is one that children do not have to pay, families do not have to pay for services.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that grant funding and how you get out there so that the community knows that you're looking for their donations and for their contributions?
Sure, this month is a big month for us because it is National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. We have had flag raisings in 7 of our towns over the past few weeks. We've had a big fundraiser where we put out 2,400 lights throughout the community to represent the 2,400 children we've been serving. And it's really one of those things that we need the community to be our partner. We need to know that this is all of our responsibility as adults to help particularly our most vulnerable kids. So we're eager to let folks know that what we do. Welcome people to our events, welcome people to come to have tours of our facility to learn about the work we do.
And before we go to break, let's just have you talk a little bit more about the mission again in your organization for our viewers who might just be tuning in right now. Sure.
So the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County provides coordinated care with a multidisciplinary team to respond to allegations of child abuse. That's what we do, and we do our best to make sure that kids stay safe and have the interventions they need to heal from whatever trauma they've experienced.
All right, Kara, we thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
When we return, we'll be discussing the services provided by the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking with Kara McElhone, Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County, about services and programs for abused children. Abuse and neglect come in many forms and many locations. With the advent of social media, sexual exploitation of children is on the rise. So we're going to ask you now, Kara, what are some of the signs that children or youth have been or are being sexually exploited?
So one of the things to always look out for is if your child suddenly has new clothing, new phones, new cash, things that you don't know why they are able to purchase those things. And then there's behavioral issues. Your child suddenly is running away a lot or is skipping school. And those kind of behavioral indications sometimes are signs that they're connecting with someone that they shouldn't be, and that could be very potentially dangerous to them. A lot of the kids we see are really at risk online, as you said. And so kids who are overly attached to their online, to their phones, or to feel like they have to be in contact with someone at all times. It could be all of those signs, or it could be none of those signs. It's difficult to tell, but you know your child, and if their behaviors have changed, or if there's something that doesn't feel right, then you trust your gut and get the help they need.
And this is a subject that's really taken a front seat recently, making national headlines. People at home might be sitting there saying, how can something like this happen?
Sadly, it can happen to any of our kids. There's particularly online predators are a real thing. Kids look to make connections online, and often there's someone on the other side who is not the safe person that they think, is often misrepresenting who they are. That's not to say there's great healthy outlets for kids online too, but the best thing a parent can do is really tap into, what's your child doing online? I would, highly recommend the passwords, what the platforms that kids are on, the devices they're using, how to unlock that, and really have constant conversations, because the best way to keep kids safe is to really keep that dialogue going so that they feel like they can come to you if something that doesn't feel right happens to them either in person or online.
And if a parent, a guardian, a friend is maybe sensing that this is going on, what are the next steps they should take?
So really, what anyone who's concerned about a child should do is make a report with DCF. That it's not your job to determine whether or not a crime is occurring, but it's your job to speak up if you're concerned. I know that can be scary, but sometimes you're the only person who's seeing a behavior that's happening, and you could be the only person that's speaking up on behalf of a child. So make a report, make the call.
And is this something that is seeing an increase locally? You know, with COVID happening, a lot of people were at home on those devices, kind of looking for that communication. You know, what are we seeing locally?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a rise in all kinds of child abuse, child exploitation being one of them. And certainly as our online platforms get more sophisticated, where kids are, have been encouraged through COVID to make sure that they have constant access to an online community, there's a lot of dangers that can come along with that. So yes is the answer. There's an increase in all forms of abuse. We know that the vast majority of kids who experience abuse, whether it's exploitation or physical or sexual abuse, never report it. So again, it just goes back to, if you're concerned, you should make a report.
Like you just said, it might not be reported. So what are some of the services and support groups out there for people to know that they can come forward with this?
So, DCF is the first line if you're concerned about the safety of a child. And then there are organizations like my own, like some others that, our job is to work and provide services once we can identify who the child is and figure out what they may need. But a big part of it is we can't help them until we know who they are.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about child abuse within families can be generational, right? And it can impact the entire family. So what are some signs of abuse in a family setting?
So abuse in a family setting is like abuse anywhere else. So, kids may suddenly have regressive behaviors. They may get clingy. Some children, their hygiene may decline. There may be a sense that, there's obviously sort of the signs of bruising and things like that, but much more often it's more insidious than that. It's signs that are hard to see, patterns that change. Kids again who miss a lot of school. We really rely on our schools and our mandated reporters to be the eyes and ears of kids. During the height of COVID, our reports actually decreased. And that wasn't because kids weren't safe, it's because kids were more safe. It was because kids didn't have anyone to speak to about it because they weren't going to school. And we rely on folks like school teachers and mandated reporters to speak up for kids.
So it's important to note that, abuse isn't always physical.
No, the vast majority of the kids we see are sexual abuse survivors. About 80% of the kids we see have come to us because of sexual abuse.
And how is this most commonly reported?
Typically what happens is a report is filed, either a police report or a 51A through the Department of Children and Family, and that report comes to us through the district attorney's office.
And, after abuse, what types of medical and mental care are offered?
So, we're really proud to be able to offer on-site medical care with a pediatric sexual assault nurse who again, in the same house, the same child-friendly environment, can provide medical care to kids right there when they come in. And we also have a mental health care, again, on-site that focuses on trauma, symptoms, and helping children navigate through the disclosure process.
And just lastly, how can people learn more about your organization?
Well, you can go to our website. It's www.cachampshire.org, and that has a lot of information about what we do, what we offer, what our ways to get involved, and to learn more about what to do if you're concerned about a child.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll continue our conversation when we come back. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the programs and services offered for victims of child abuse through the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. Previously, we talked about recognizing signs of abuse and services for victims. And now I want to ask you, Kara, what other services do you provide for children and families in this situation?
Sure, we have a team of terrific advocates who really help families navigate what this means for their family. Often the disclosure of abuse really just blows up a family situation, and so it's not unusual for this disclosure to mean that folks need to get new housing or need services in the community to connect them with other types of care. So we have advocates who work on that. We provide training for community members, for community groups with things like online safety and mandated reporter training, body safety training, so that groups and individuals can know what to look for and how to keep kids safe.
And when you hear the term child abuse, someone might think that it's an adult abusing a child, but it could be a child abusing a child. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Sometimes we find that kids are in a position of harming other children, and we provide services to children. So that means if there is a child who is under the age of 12, 12 being kind of important because in Massachusetts you can charge children 12 and over with crimes. But there are programs for kids who need to have mental health care, need to really better understand their behaviors, and then obviously for the children who have experienced that abuse, we provide those services as well, regardless of who is the initiator of the abuse.
And I want to touch on this. Massachusetts law has a list that defines which professionals are mandated reporters. It's pretty lengthy. So could you just tell us a little bit about who's considered a mandated reporter?
So first of all, mandated reporters are heroes to us in our work because, again, they are the eyes and ears in our community. A mandated reporter is someone who is paid to work in any capacity to work with children. All of our school personnel, first responders, medical personnel. It is a very broad list, but it's really critical because without them, we wouldn't know who needs the services that we can provide.
And is there any, training available to become a mandated reporter?
Sure. I mean, you can go to our website. There's an online mandated reporter training, but also one of the things we do is provide group trainings. So if you are part of a school or a daycare or, a community group that wants to be trained with mandated reporter information, we're happy to provide that to you as well.
And what's the protocol for reporting?
So a mandated reporter makes a call and has to have to DCF, and then also has to follow up with a written report.
And what resources does your organization provide for maybe caregivers or other adults who are responsible for a child who's been a victim of abuse?
Well, we know that the way for children to heal and be safe is to have healthy parents who understand what to expect, how to also take care of themselves. This is a really stressful thing when you find out your child's been harmed. So taking care of the caregivers is a big part of what we do, ensuring that they get the help they need to be the healthiest that they can be to really walk with that child through this whole process.
Yeah, and let's talk about opportunities to volunteer. Somebody might hear about your organization and be really inclined to want to help.
Sure. Well, first of all, that would be great. We'd love that. So we have a series of events, particularly in April. We just had a big event. But one of the things we do is on our website. You'll see upcoming events where we're always looking for volunteers, for people to help to get involved. Sometimes organizations or businesses adopt us and do, a fundraising initiative or like a fun day in which people then bring in either items that we're looking for or gift cards that then come and donate to us as well. Because, it really is, keeping kids safe is a community effort.
And do you have any annual fundraising events or tournaments, anything like that people can take part in? Sure.
So we just had this little light of mine. In October, we will have our 25th anniversary, and that we're going to have a community breakfast. And then just on June 4th, there is going to be a road race in Florence, in Northampton, that we are the fortunate beneficiaries of as well. So, we've got lots of folks in the community who want to help us raise awareness and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, that's great. And just, for our viewers who might be just joining us now, let's just talk about how someone can report suspected abuse to the state again.
Sure, there's a DCF hotline. It's a 24/7 hotline. I think you'll put the number up and so that everyone will know. And you can always call law enforcement too. It's the most important thing is to call for help.
And again, just the signs to be on the lookout for.
You want to make sure if you notice behavioral changes with your child that you cannot explain. Your child's withdrawn, any sort of self-harming behavior. Really think about reaching out for help, whether or not you know the source of what's causing this or not. There's a lot of resources that can be put into place to help keep your child safe, but it really depends on someone making that report. So if you're concerned, please speak up.
And again, just making children know that it is okay to talk about this.
Absolutely. If the most important thing we can do is be a trusted adult in a child's life. And whether that's your own child, your neighbor, your friend, your cousin, having someone to speak to that can really help prevent and intervene with potential abuse.
Yeah, and just lastly, again, how people can learn a little bit more about what you guys do.
Sure. cachampshire.org, or you can give us a call at 413-570-5989, and we're happy to answer any questions and give any materials or advice that we can to help folks as they figure out how to keep kids safe together.
Okay, Kara McElhone of CAC of Hampshire County, thank you so much, and once we return, we'll have some final words. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You've been watching 22 News in Focus, and today we've been talking about recognizing child abuse and services provided by the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. With the organization's executive director, Kara McElhone, we thank you so much for being on the program and providing that essential information for our viewers.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And after the commercial break, we'll be speaking with a clinician at Helix Human Services to continue our conversation. We'll be back shortly.
From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Ciara Speller. April is recognized as Child Abuse Awareness Month. And today on 22 News in Focus, we're talking with two organizations that advocate and provide services for children. In the first half hour, we learned about the work being done by the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County. And during this half hour, our guest is Amma Bortzi, a clinician at Helix Human Services, formerly the Children's Study Home. And we thank you, Amma, for being on our program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, as mentioned, your organization recently changed its name. Originally, it was the Children's Study Home. That was beginning in 1865. So why the name change?
Thank you for that question. So we recently had a strategic planning, and out of that came the need to change the name because we wanted to make sure that what we were doing and what people were hearing about in the program matched what was being portrayed out in the community. And so we recognized that the Children's Study Home made it seem as though only children were being serviced, but we service a whole lot more diverse population than just children, and so the need for that.
And so let's talk about the organization's mission and how it's changed over the years.
So the mission has been the same. It's really to help traumatized people, families, children, and to ensure that they are getting the best services that they can so that they can have the foundation to move on and be successful both at home, in schools, in the community, wherever they find themselves. And so the mission has really been the same throughout, since it was founded, and since the organization was founded. Yes.
And so let's talk about who are your programs and services geared to? You mentioned the name change, so let's talk about who they're geared to.
Yep. So like I said, it's for all sorts of people, so children, adults, and all of that. We have so many different programs. We have residential programs, we have the schools, we have a Fathers in Trust program, for example, we have the family advocacy programming, and we have like the family support programs. And then recently we opened up our clinic, and so we have a whole lot of that different services that are geared to everyone, who is traumatized, who have a mental health issue and needs any sort of help. So yes.
And does Helix have any community partners, and how do you work together, if so?
Yeah, so we have a few of them. So Mass Providers Council, for example, Employers Association of the Northeast, Children's League of Massachusetts, Human Services Forum. We work with the Council of Accreditation, and also the MAPS, which is the Massachusetts Accredited Association of Accredited Public Schools. And so we basically collaborate with them to ensure that we're given the best services as possible and making sure that it's holistic services and comprehensive for each individual that we work with.
And is there a place that our viewers can go to learn a little bit more about your partners and who you guys are?
Yep. So when you go to our website, which is helixhumanservices.org, you will find all of our community partners listed, and you can click on them and you can get more information as to how to work with them. Yes.
And is your work focused locally or statewide?
Statewide. Okay. So we have programs in the Cape. We also have one of our schools in the Berkshires, and then most of it is in Springfield area. But it is we service all the kids that we get, especially in the residentials, come from all over Massachusetts.
Okay, yes. That's important to note. So thank you for that. And how many individuals and families do you help annually?
It's about 200. So again, we have so many different programs. The Fathers in Trust. We have the Family Advocacy Centers and sorts of that. And we have our clinic now and the residentials as well. So we are looking at serving about 200 or more individuals each year.
And how are children and families referred to your services?
So mostly through DCF. It's closed referrals through DCF, except for our clinic recently that was opened. And so the community have access to be able to, go and either get themselves a therapist through that, or having community partners or whatnot just kind of refer them there as well. So the residentials and all the other programs, the schools come from the school districts of the children. So these are kids that have are not able to be serviced by the normal public schools and have more difficulty, behavioral issues, are traumatized, and so they end up coming into these Mill Pond schools, whether it's the Berkshire school or the or in the Springfield area. And so again, they are either from the school districts, either from DCF, or they can go through making their own referrals to the clinic that we have now.
And what about costs? Are there any costs for your programs?
So for our programs, no. For the clinic, it's billable, so they bill the insurance. So all of our programs, there's no cost for it, no.
And let's talk about some funding. Mm-hmm. How are you funded?
Mostly by the state. And again, with our clinic, they bill the insurances. So minus that, the state funds the rest of the programs.
And can the community get involved as well? Is there a way for the community to make contributions? Is that an option?
Absolutely. So when you go on our website, there's a donate section, and you can always hit that and donate. I know that we do send out, occasionally, whether quarterly or whatnot, we send out information to the community to donate as well. We know that like Big Y and stuff like that, sometimes, it comes out and we are able to, if you buy bags there, or if we buy something like that, they also make donations to our program for the children that we work with.
All right, that's great. And for those who might have just tuned in a little bit late, they're just joining us now. Let's talk just a little bit more about Helix and your mission.
Right. So again, our mission is to really service people by providing them therapeutic services that they need so that they can become resilient and be able to function in the community, at home or at school, or within the family, wherever they find themselves.
Yeah, and so therapeutic services,
Absolutely.
Why is that so important to have that option?
It's so important because, as we know, especially after COVID, mental health issues has spiked, and in light of just talking about the Child Abuse Prevention Month, we've also noticed that there's been an increase in child abuse. We've seen an increase in a lot of kids coming out of their homes because of issues related to that, and so it stems from trauma. Sometimes parents themselves are traumatized. Sometimes the kids, the stress of the home causes parents to sometimes be abusive towards their children. And so it is important. It creates, these mental health issues, whether it's depression, anxiety, or whatnot, in children or the families themselves that they have it. And so it's important to be able to provide that so that people have the skills and the ability to become resilient so that we can stop the cycle of the abuse that is going on.
All right, Alma, thank you so much.
No problem.
And we'll continue our conversation once we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the programs and services offered at Helix Human Services with Amma Bortzi, a clinician at Helix Human Services. Abuse can take many forms: physical, mental, and neglect. Children, especially young children, have no recourse as they have nowhere to go. As a clinician, you have to deal with children who have been traumatized. And Amma, I just want to ask you, what are some ways to recognize child abuse?
Yes, absolutely. So, when a child and the child is with you, or they're in school, or they, you're in a community place or anything like that, you would know because there will be some changes in the behaviors of the child, right? So whether it is them being withdrawn, if you have a kid come in and they're usually very bubbly, but they are now withdrawing, if there's some that are very obvious, like physical, so there might be bruises or things like that, you absolutely would see that because that's very evident. If you see a child cutting, they're not really as talking to you as they used to be able to talk to you and open up as much as they used to be able to, and if a child is very jittery, some of them will become very hyper and jumpy, and so when you recognize these things, any changes that you recognize in a child that weren't there for however long you've been with that child, is important to kind of dig deeper to see if it's abuse or if it's something else.
Right, and so when a child is placed for counseling, how do you assess their specific needs?
Yes, so with specifically where I am at in Helix Human Services, when a kid comes in, typically again it's referred through DCF. And so when they come in, we usually will get an assessment that tells us some of the things that they've been through, whatever abuses they've been through and things like that. There are also those ones that often we don't get those assessments. And so when we have kids like that, we are working with direct staff members that are also there to observe the kids. And so we have logbooks that we make sure that we are doing observations, writing down different things that we are seeing with the child, different behaviors that we are seeing with them. And then we will make an assessment after the first 30 days. We will have a meeting so that we can kind of discuss all the different things that we are seeing in collaboration with DCF or whoever their legal guardian is, and including anybody that has worked with a child for a while prior to us, so that we can all come together and make a plan that makes the most sense for that child. So because we don't obviously want to use a cookie cutter model, and so we want to make sure that we are tailoring specific plans to the child that makes sense, in terms of identifying coping strategies that might be helpful for the child, and identifying different community activities, recreational activities that might be helpful for them, or whatnot. What other supports do they need in the community? So it really is very dependent on the child, and what their needs are, what they're presenting us with, and what we need to respond to will determine what their plan would look like.
Right, and so with those individualized plans, who would be on their team to implement the plan?
Absolutely. So the first people would be Helix. Helix Human Services will be the first people, but we very much work in collaboration with DCF, who most of the time are their legal guardians. If they have families involved, we always involve families. I am a certified family therapist, and so I would always provide family therapy as needed. We also have what we call the advocates in our programs, so they serve as mentors. So what we try to do is allow them to take the kids out in the community so that they can increase their pro-social recreational activities, because a lot of times the kids don't have good coping strategies, and so what happens is they involve themselves in negative activities in the community that ends up with them being into these programs that like Helix residentials and things like that. And so we have all these people involved. So DCF will be involved, Helix, whether it's our residential staff, ourselves, myself as a clinician, we have our program managers, and whatever other programs the kids were involved with prior to, or whoever the other partners the kids were involved with in the community will be always pulled in to help, because we want to build a village around that child. And so whoever steps forward, whoever is willing to be helpful for that child, we invite to the table.
Great. And when you counsel children and youth, what are some of their concerns?
The biggest thing is that adults don't understand them. most of the time that is where we lose them, because whether it's the way we are talking to them, and we're talking about Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so we're looking at a lot of the kids that come through Helix Human Services who all have been abused. And so when they come and they see another adult who says, I care about you, it's really difficult for them to trust, right? They can't trust the fact that you are being genuine when you say that you care about them and you're willing to help them. And so trust is a big deal for the kids. They don't trust the adults. If my parents were not trustworthy and they were not protecting me, why are you saying that you trust and care, right? And so it's really difficult. That is mainly the difficulty we have, is the trust. That's their concern, is that adults can't be trusted. They think adults are always right. That's their mentality, is that adults think that they're always right. And so they always suspect that we are never going to listen to them or hear them. And so a lot of times they shut us off before we can even try to work with them. So the biggest concern is they can't trust us, and we can be trusted according to them. So.
And how do you make sure that they know that they can trust you, regaining that trust again?
So it's about consistency. Trauma-informed care suggests that you are consistent with your responses to the child. You are providing routine and rituals so that it's everything. They know what's next. They can trust you. They know that every time you come in, every time you work with them, you're going to be the same type of person. You're not going to change up on them. You're not going to say yes today and no tomorrow. So the more you do that and become more consistent with them, the more they slowly can build that trust. And so they can seek you out when they need help. And that way, if something is happening to them, if they're being abused, if you're being neglected, whatnot, they will then at that point feel comfortable to come to you. So it's about consistency, and it takes a lot of work because you're talking about years of some of these kids being with adults that unfortunately have not cared enough to provide their needs, to not make sure that they're not being abused or neglected or whatnot. And so it takes a lot, but it really takes consistency and dedication to be able to get them to that point where they can trust.
Yeah, and just lastly, how can our viewers learn more about your organization?
Absolutely. So you can always go to helixhumanservices.org, and we have all of our programs listed, and we have all of our partners listed, and you can certainly, through the Contact Us, you can get more information by emailing us as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And after the break, we'll discuss the programs and services offered through Helix Human Services. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We're back now with 22 News in Focus, and today we're talking about trauma support services for children who have been victims of abuse with Amma Bortzi, a clinician at Helix Human Services. Helix offers many programs for youth, families, and adults, and we have the comprehensive foster care program that you want to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. So the comprehensive foster care program is a program that services youth and children that are not able to maintain or remain in their homes for whatever reason, whether it's because they're being abused or neglected, or because their parents are having difficulties managing them at home. And so these kids are not kids that can just be in regular, normal foster homes. They are kids that have also been highly traumatized, and so they need more intense services. And so the comprehensive foster care service program helps to make sure that we have a multidisciplinary team working with that child, even though they're in the in the foster care department as well. And so they might have a therapist, that works with them while they're in the foster home. The foster parents themselves have been trained for different things, like trauma-informed care and how to manage those kids at home and everything like that. They might have, like I said, a therapist out in the community. They might have a mentor and things like that. And they have, they can have services through our family visitation services as well, so that they can, work together to reunite back at home and things like that. And so these are kids that need more than just the normal clinical services. So they're placed in the comprehensive foster home because they cannot remain in their homes.
And, what are the residential programs offered, and how is somebody placed?
So we have 3 residential programs. One is called the Cottage, and it's for our latency age, kids from age 6 all the way through their 13th birthday. And so these are kids, again, that have some trauma. They've been abused, neglected, removed from their homes, and they're having some intense behavioral issues, and they need to be placed in a residential program, so they're there. Then we have our START program, the Start Here program, and it is for commercially sexually exploited children. And so it's for the CSEC kids. And again, the caveat is that they're traumatized children as well. And then we have our LGBTQIA plus program also on the same campus as CSEC, where we service the population of LGBTQIA plus and all the needs that they might have, and we tailor our clinical work specifically to that population as well. And so all of these, with all three programs, it's a closed referral from DCF. So DCF sends us the referral, we look them over, and we make sure that they fit the program and the services that we provide is what they need, and then we'll extend a hand for them to be placed with us.
And there's also the Family Wellness Center in Holyoke. So what are the services offered there? So
it's our mental health clinic, and so basically it's mental health. So it goes, we have clinicians that service children, young adults and adults as well. And so you can go there and get that. And recently they've been also providing parent classes for them, and just parent support groups also in the wellness center as well.
And tell us a little bit about the Mill Pond schools and the programs offered there.
Yep, so Mill Pond schools is for kids that have been referred from their districts where their needs supersede what the district is able to provide for them. And so these are kids that are high behavioral needs because of trauma, because of other mental health issues, sometimes high functioning autism. And so these are kids that go there, and we have skilled teachers and workers there that are able to kind of help manage those behaviors so that the kids can get the education that they need.
And I want to have you talk about the Fathers in Trust program and who's eligible to participate in that program.
Yep. So the Fathers in Trust program is for fathers. It's geared toward men and basically to help them develop good parenting skills. So whoever father is having issues, mainly, they also work with AISS, and so some of these, people coming from after incarceration will also be referred there so that they can reunite with their children and be able to have the skills developed properly so that they can be better fathers for those kids as well.
And tell us about the Family Reunification Support Program and how that works.
So that's also in collaboration with DCF. So when kids are ready and they're about 6 months away from being reunited at home, that's when we come in and we do that work with them so that we can develop specific plans and supports for the children and their families for when they return home so that they can be successful and hopefully not return to residential programs or be placed out of their homes into foster care and things like that.
And are these families also part of the Family Assessment and Mentoring Service?
No. So the Family Assessment and Mentoring Service is in the Cape, and that's also a different. So the family, the first one is in the Springfield area, and the Family Assessment Mentoring Services is at the Cape.
Okay. And do you offer supervised visitation, and do families meet at your facility, or is it at a home? How does that work?
Yes, we do have supervised visitations, and again, it's with DCF, and so DCF usually makes that referral, and we do have a center that they come and meet, and we have support workers that sometimes will pick up the kids. So if a kid is at school and they end school and we know maybe the bus would take too long, we would have them pick up them, and they will come to our facility on Sherman Street, and they would have the visits. Yes.
Yes, and we also have a number for DCR that I want to have us put that up if we can, about reporting child abuse to the state by using this number. In addition to this number, people can also get in contact with your organization.
Absolutely.
And how would they do that?
So the best way is through our website, so helixhumanservices.org, and you can always, again, we have the contact us page, and you can always contact us through that for any services that we can provide outpatient-wise.
And is that 24-hour number that people can call, or they can leave a message and you'll get back to them as soon as possible?
It's not a 24-hour number because, again, it's closed services, so mostly through DCF, except our clinic. And so, again, with our website, you'll be able to get through to our clinic and our through there. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Alma. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And once we return, we'll have the final words. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You've been watching 22 News in Focus, and today we've been talking about the programs and services available for children and families who have suffered from abuse. We thank Amma Bortzi, a clinician at Helix Human Services, for joining us today. Thank you so much for your insightful information for our viewers.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you at home for watching. If you missed any of our program, you can watch it in full on our website at wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, have a great day.